So today I thought we'd take a little bit of a deeper look at Joe Biden's 2020 platform. And I don't just want to read through his positions. What I want to do is pick a few areas and think about whether Joe Biden's ideas, whether Joe Biden's policy positions, his policy prescriptions, his platform, would Joe Biden's policy ideas really deal with root problems, or would they fix symptoms of a problem? And I want to make a couple of things clear. Number one, we have a system that incentivizes dealing with symptoms and not problems. When you're in Congress, you have a reelection every 2 years, and you have to justify being reelected. Presidents have 4-year terms, senators 6, but of course it's much more difficult to get big things done sometimes in the Senate, depending on what type of thing you're talking about, although that doesn't always apply. So we fundamentally have a system that encourages not really dealing with the systemic problems, which often take more than 2 or 4 years to deal with, but rather dealing with symptoms, or even appearing to deal with symptoms without actually dealing with them. So we're going to talk about that. Now, a few important things to think about. One is, I'm going to go by Joe Biden's stated 2020 platform. Now, there are going to be people who write to me and say, I don't believe that Joe Biden actually wants to do X or Y, even though he claims he does. Listen, to some extent, no president does what they promise, and every candidate states that they will try to do things that are very difficult to do or almost impossible to do. Look at Donald Trump's presidency, for an example. But this is a pointless exercise if we're simply going to say, oh, here's Joe's list of stuff he wants to do. I think he's just lying. Okay, I mean, listen, it's impossible to defeat that argument if you want to insist on making it. Number two, some of you might say, well, why aren't you talking about Biden wanting to cut Social Security? Again, I'm going by Biden's 2020 platform. In the 90s, Joe Biden said he would consider putting Social Security cuts on the table if a proposal otherwise made sense to him. It was 25 years ago. It's not part of his platform today. There's no real reason to include that in his platform because it's simply not. Lastly, when I talk about solving a problem versus dealing with a symptom, let's use an example from the Trump presidency. Trump believes the solution to undocumented immigration is to build a wall across the entire U.S.-Mexico border. Building a wall at best deals with a symptom, right? The wall would potentially slow down the portion of people coming to the U.S. illegally by physically crossing the U.S.-Mexico land border. That's a symptom of the problem. To solve the actual problem, you would have to deal with, number one, the economic conditions in Latin America that lead people to want to come to the United States illegally in the first place. You would have to deal with more strictly punishing, or punishing at all, companies that hire undocumented immigrants, because as long as companies keep doing that and not being punished, they're going to continue doing it. And number three, you would also have to account for the higher prices that would come on many products if indeed you rooted out all undocumented labor in the United States. So building the wall maybe addresses part of one symptom, but it does nothing to deal with the problem. That's the type of thinking that we want to do here. I'm not going to do all of Joe Biden's positions, but let's do some of the key things. We'll start with criminal justice. On criminal justice, Joe Biden wants to eliminate mandatory minimum sentences, eliminate private prisons, end the cocaine sentencing disparity, end the cash bail system, and eliminate the death penalty. So to answer whether this deals with the problem or just symptoms, you have to understand what the problem is. I would generalize the problem with our justice system, including the courts and criminal justice system, as we have a two-tiered system, one for the rich and one for the poor, with a heavily racialized component and a for-profit component that has no business being there. And it is at its core a system that is focusing too much on street crime and not enough on corporate and white-collar crime. So when I look at what Joe Biden wants to do on criminal justice, I would say that this is somewhere in the middle between fixing symptoms and dealing with the problem. Biden goes directly at some elements of the problem. So ending cash bail in private prisons, that deals with the for-profit component of the problem. But the problem is way bigger. And this proposal from Joe Biden does nothing about setting priorities in terms of street crime versus corporate and white-collar crime. Doesn't address that at all. Biden also is not in favor of legalization of cannabis. that is a massive criminal justice issue, and he is not in favor of it. So I would say that Biden on criminal justice, he's just past dealing with only symptoms towards getting at some of the problems, but it doesn't do nearly enough. Now, by the way, Trump's a disaster. So this is not a comparison with Trump. I want to make that really clear. Next, let's look at the economy. Joe Biden on the economy. Okay, what is Joe Biden's economic policy? Joe Biden wants a $15 an hour minimum wage. He wants paid family and sick leave, a $1.3 trillion infrastructure package, roll back the Trump tax cuts, meaning raise the top rate from 37 to 39.6%, extend the payroll tax to $400,000. Currently, that caps out at about $138,000. Raise the corporate tax rate from 21 to 28%, tax capital gains and dividends as ordinary income after $1 million a year, and then put a 15% minimum tax on large companies to prevent them from using loopholes and deductions to end up paying zero. So here, Biden starts to get at some of the actual economic problems in this country. Inequality, a system designed to allow you to pay less and less as a percentage of what you earn as you have more and more. This applies to rich individuals and corporations as well. So Biden is getting at some of the fundamental problems here. Now, what Biden doesn't deal with in terms of problems are the absolutely sky-high costs of living in much of the country. $15 an hour is great, but it's not a living wage in much of the country. Doesn't deal with guaranteeing a living wage. Doesn't deal with the loopholes that are disproportionately used by the super rich. So, for example, taking the payroll tax threshold up to 400,000. This year, it's 137,700. That hits people earning between 137K and 400K, but then it goes away. And we can have a debate over what's right and what's fair and what's economically sensible. But the point is, if you're above 400,000 a year in income, you're unaffected by that. And the ultra rich who are really benefiting from a lot of the loopholes and mechanisms that exist, they're earning way more than $400,000 a year. Another example, the top tax bracket would go back to 39.6% under Joe Biden. That's what it was before Donald Trump. Okay, great. But that doesn't go nearly high enough. And we need higher and more tax brackets. We probably need, there's a bunch of proposals, but we probably need like a 42% tax bracket at $1 million. And then we would go to a 48%. Okay, so we need more brackets and they need to go higher. Biden does a little bit, but he's not really dealing with it at a more core issue, which is the ultra rich that as a percentage of their total income are actually paying lower rates. But there is some good stuff in there, and night and day compared to Trump. I mean, truly night and day. In short, Biden's economic policy platform is a completely predictable, uncontroversial, moderately left proposal. It deals with symptoms. It gets at some problems, but it doesn't do nearly enough. It's way better than Trump. Let's do one more area for today, which is healthcare. This is obviously huge. Biden on healthcare. He has said that he supports lowering the Medicare age from 65 to 60, would create a public option, would give free access to the public option if you're in a state that didn't do the Medicaid expansion that was part of Obamacare. There are Republican governors who said, okay, Obamacare includes this Medicaid expansion, but we're not going to do it. If you are in one of those states, you would get free access to the public option, even if your state didn't do the expansion based on income, up to 138% of the federal poverty level. That's like 5 million people. And then Biden would also increase tax credits by eliminating the 400% poverty level cap and limiting the total out-of-pocket cost to 8.5% of income. That would be down from close to 10%. And the credits would be based on gold plans rather than, I don't remember if it's bronze or silver currently. That raises the amount of the credits. And then Biden would limit launch prices and price increases on drugs, as well as allow foreign drug purchases. So there's a lot there. It is not Medicare for all. It is not universal. There's no doubt about it. What are the numbers that this would achieve? If you lower the Medicare age from 65 to 60, I believe it adds 18 million people to Medicare. I don't have that number in front of me, and I had a little trouble finding it. But going from memory, I believe it's about 18 or 20 million more people that would get Medicare by lowering the age from 65 to 60. It's not universal, but a lot of people. Free public option in states without Medicaid expansion would add, again, about 5 million, 4.9 million people. And then there are certainly millions more that would be able to afford health insurance with this. Is it a panacea? Of course not. Of course not. Is it better than Trump's proposal with Republicans, which would have seen 24 to 32 million more people lose insurance? Of course it's better than that. The symptoms are care is too expensive, it's sometimes low quality, and it's not accessible to everyone, in large part because of the for-profit system that we have. Does Biden's plan change the problem of healthcare being for profit? Of course not. He doesn't believe that's the problem. That's a major disagreement right now, even within the Democratic Party. Biden deals substantively with symptoms, and the way he does it is you get care to more people and you make it affordable for more people, but not everyone. So let's step back a little bit. To sum up, we have a system that encourages at a fundamental level, because of the frequency of elections, how politics is financed, needing to raise money, et cetera, and how long things take to get done. We have a system that incentivizes appearing to deal with symptoms. Sometimes you're actually dealing with a symptom. Sometimes you're only appearing to, and optics very much are the only thing that actually matters. When Congress is up for re-election every 2 years, when presidents get 4-year terms, we have to understand the difficulty in a system like that of dealing with problems. This doesn't excuse candidates or presidents who don't do it, and it doesn't encourage only dealing with symptoms. We just have to understand that reality. Trump, by and large, has identified the wrong symptoms and is dealing with them in a completely farcical way. That's how I would sum it up. Joe Biden would actually deal with these symptoms in a way that would function reasonably well, but would only start to get at the underlying problems. That's my assessment on healthcare, economy, and criminal justice. We could look at environment and others, and maybe we will do so. Let me know what you think about this framework of symptoms versus problems. I'm on Twitter at @dpakman. We'll take a quick break, and so much on today's program. There's a YouTube channel called UpFlip that we're partnering with. I would love for you to check it out. I've put the link right underneath the video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel when you're there. UpFlip is a channel that is all about exploring small business and what makes a small business successful. Every episode interviews an entrepreneur. You take a tour of the business, and these are not generic interviews. You actually get a really fascinating deep dive into the history of the business, the mistakes the entrepreneur made, what they learned, what motivates them, what a day is like running their business. And you get all sorts of super interesting and valuable insight about what it's like to run that type of small business. As a business owner myself, I find UpFlip's videos to be endlessly intriguing. Even if you don't own your own business, it is really great for a general audience. It's stuff that I think just about anybody would find fascinating. And you can check it out by going to davidpakman.com/upflip. The link is right underneath this video. When you're there, make sure to subscribe and click the bell for notifications.